Hello and welcome to Flight Sim Alaska. I'm Dave, the armchair bush pilot. So I thought for today's video, I'd like to sneak something in between my normal video rotation, and this is a little bit different than what I normally do. Normally I do that tour of Alaska, and this is a little bit different. I'm going to do a night flight with IFR, Instrument Flight Rules, and ILS, which is Instrument Landing Services, and I'll be using this little Textron Aviation Cessna 172 Skyhawk, which does have what we call a glass cockpit. Now today's plan is to fly from Nenana, which is just southeast of Fairbanks here, Nenana Muni. It's on the Nenana River, which is kind of just a little bit north here. And then here's Fairbanks International. So what we're going to do is, rather than fly direct, we're kind of going to do this weird loop-de-loop, and it comes around here so that we can get into the flight path. Now, again, this video is going to be less about touring Alaska, although I'm going to add some of that stuff in there too, but more about like just flying the airplane. Now, reminder, I'm not a pilot. I really don't know what I'm doing. And so I'm like sharing this because I really enjoy the flight simulator and I enjoy learning this stuff. So I just want to throw this video out there as a little bit more content, something interesting that I kind of want to do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to start cold and dark. So we're going to just start here at ramp 10 parking, and that's going to be just fine. And then we'll go over here, and we need to land on runway 02L, 02 left, because that's the runway that's got our ILS approach. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and choose not that. We're going to go ahead and choose low altitude airways. I'm going to check my nav log real fast and just double check our altitude. It says 3,700 feet. I prefer to start with 5,000 on this one. We are heading west, so we want, east, so we want an odd number in any case. And since we're IFR, I think we don't have to, we don't have to add the 500. I think I've got that right. I've been studying up, and fortunately, this is a flight simulator. So here we go. Let's go ahead and see what we've got. Cool, this has got it. What it doesn't have is our approach. So I'm going to use ILS 02 left. Okay. Now what this is showing us doing is heading up to this ENN and then around and then kind of down. That's not actually what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to head south quite a bit, and then I'm going to kind of spin around this way. Actually, I might try to come around this way and up, because this ENN is actually on top of a hill. And there's no way, if we look at the nav log here, you can see that if we try to get up there 950 feet, we're going to crash right into that. So that's not what we're going to do. We're going to come around and maybe like so. And then what's going to happen is that our autopilot is actually going to take us way down to, let's see, this glows transition. That's in fact where we're headed. And then we'll head up and then we'll catch the ILS, which is to say the Instrument Landing Services, up in here. So that is the plan. I think I have gotten it good enough to go for right now. Let's double check our time, because I do want to do this at night. Cool, so it's 9:20 works. And this is, let's just double check, October 25th. So that's basically right now. So it does get really dark this time of year. Cool, so I'm going to hit fly, and I will catch you when we get in the cockpit. Cool, so here we are sitting in the aircraft. Oh, let's close that VFR map. We don't need that right now. I'm going to turn off that yoke for us. Our flashlight is on so we can see what we're doing. I am not going to follow all of the procedures 100% because if you do the full checklist, it takes time, which I do actually do on my own when I'm flying just to practice, because I want an authentic simulator experience. And so I'm just set the trim to make sure that's good to go. The trim wheel in the flight simulator is really, really sensitive. Our parking brake is set. That's great. So let's go ahead and turn on our battery. Cool.
System test. Okay.
Turn that back on. Let's go ahead and get those going. Fantastic. Turn our strobe on real quick. I guess our beacon. And let's look at getting this thing started in 1/4 of an inch. Now, normally you deal with mixture control for realsies, right? In the sim, I haven't graduated to that yet, so I have automatic mixture control, but I am trying to go through sort of the motions here of trying to get it right. So this looks good. Let's go ahead and get this thing fired up. I think we are good to go. Fuel tank selected. Let's see if this works here. Nice. Okay. Mixture control. Set RPMs to about 1,000. Here, they're up here. That's probably going to be fine. Let's get our avionics going here, and then let's turn on some internal lights so that we can see what in the heck-a-rooney we're doing here. All right, turn off that. Let's get some overhead light going. Cool. I think we can fly. Let's get this thing started. So first things first, what I like to do is to actually tune our ILS approach first. So I'm going to get that thing set up here because then I don't have to worry about it. In the sim, it turns out that it already will pick up the ILS approach for you when you get close enough. At least that's what I've experienced, certainly with this particular flight. And I've done this a bunch of times. I rather enjoy doing this one when it's raining because, well, I don't know, it's just fun. This whole video here is just for the fun of flying. So let's think about this. Let's go ahead and get our nav set. So for Fairbanks ILS 02L is we want to get our frequency at 109.1. And I apologize if I don't have the jargon right. I'm not a pilot. So maybe I'm supposed to say it 109.9. I don't know. I really don't. Okay, 109.1, cool. That's standby. We'll fire that up later on. And then we want to go ahead and change this course here to 020. Realistically, it's going to give us something slightly different when we actually get into the ILS approach. Cool, that is set. So now I'm going to go ahead and change my CDI to GPS. That's what we're actually going to navigate at. And then let's see here, what else do we need to do? That's looking pretty darn good. Let's go ahead and tune some radios here and then request to IFR. So the way this system works in here, and all this stuff I've kind of figured out sort of on my own with a few YouTube videos, is we go ahead and tune this. This is a real pain in the butt. I'd like better controls specifically to get this right. And of course, in the sim, you could just hit 1 and it would automatically tune it, which is cool, and that's really good for beginners. I'm also a beginner, so like, you know, I don't feel like pretentious about it or anything, but I also want a more authentic experience. Okay, cool. So we've tuned that in. Let's go ahead and make that active. Now we're going to have to request IFR clearance through this thing.
Radio ACBP 444 IFR to Fairbanks, ready to copy. ACBP 444 is cleared to Fairbanks Airport as filed. Climb and maintain 5,000 feet. Departure frequency is 125.35 squawk 7625. Clearance void 30 minutes from now. ACBP 444 cleared to Fairbanks Airport as filed. Climb and maintain 5,000 feet. Departure is 125.35 squawk 7625. Clearance void 30 minutes from now. ACBP 444 read back correct.
Alright, fantastic. So what we're going to do first here is set our transponder. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the code. So I hit the XPDR button and then hit the code. And the code here is 7625. So 7625. It's all right there. Hit back, still there, set that on because air traffic control will absolutely ask you why it's not on. Go back, our CDI is set to GPS, this is fantastic. The next step is to go ahead and set our altitude. Now I have stuff mapped, but we need to hit the VNAV mode on and the nav mode on. We'll go ahead and fire those up both at the same time when we turn on our autopilot. But I also want to turn on the vertical speed mode. Now I could also use the what's it called? I could use flight level control, but I'm not familiar with that yet, and I'm still trying to figure this out. Plus, I do like to fly this one in the rain, and so that I understand is a better way to go is to do this. Okay, that's pretty good. We're going to climb ourselves for a while because I want to get above 2,000 feet before we start swinging around to this. Oh, that's right. We've got to do this. Let's go ahead and do it this way before we start swinging around to this ENN. So what I'm going to try to do, I think what I might actually do is fly around this way and then come up and then try to intersect this and then fire up the autopilot on that. So I think we're pretty good. So all we have to do at this point is engage the autopilot once we're up. So that's where we're at. So I think we're set with all those things. I'm going to go ahead and tune traffic, and then I'm going to set my standby to the departure code here. So let's start with this to start with. So we want to tune 122.9. Hopefully we can get that right. So there's a little outside button here that I'm hitting first with my mouse wheel, which is ridiculous, but that's what you have. 122.9, great. So we'll tune that, and then we'll tune our standby frequency to this. Hold on a second here. So you're going to find it 125.35. So let's see here. Get that up to 3.5. Almost there. This is such a pain in the butt. I'd love to have some kind of a control. I keep thinking that there must be a way to set these things up. Oops, see, there we go. I got it goofed up there because it's hard to tell. There we go. Great. So the reason I did it this way is because once you're in the air, air traffic control is gonna say, hey, go ahead and hand off. You know, you got to contact Anchorage Center on whatever. And the problem is that when you're flying, and the setup that I've got, you know, you've got to hold the yoke with the right hand with the setup that I've got, and so I can't just, you know, tune it manually. So we got the standby, and I'll try to do the same thing when we get to the approach, actually, because I always get goofed up with ground control as well. So I think we're pretty good. Again, right now I went with clear, calm. Got the moon here, a little more pixelated than I'd like it, but looks pretty good. Nice halo on the horizon. This is very, very standard Alaska look and feel here. Cool. So let's go ahead and announce our taxi, and hopefully it gets us right. We're going to take off runway 22 right, and this doesn't always get us where we want to be. So let's go ahead and select a runway first. Select runway 22 right, and then let's announce taxi.
Papa Alpha November November traffic ACBP 444 is taxiing to runway 22 right.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. I can't remember if I left the ribbon on. So in the simulator, there's a assistance ribbon that'll come up and show you where you're supposed to go. Yep, I did leave it on. Well, we're going to go ahead and let that be for right now. I do know this airport well enough, and it's also small, and there's nowhere to get lost, that I don't really need this assistance, but it does come in handy when you're in a bigger airport, and especially if you don't have the approach plates handy or the airport map. Now, if you can go on SkyVector, that stuff will spell all that stuff out, and I think that's what I want to start working my way towards, is being able to land at larger airports like Anchorage and Fairbanks, and be able to know where to go. So we're going to pause here just for a second. I think this is the point where you kind of look for traffic. I don't know. See, this is where I struggle as a not pilot, is I don't know at what point you announce that you're entering the runway and about to line up for takeoff. But there isn't a taxiway that I was able to find. Of course, I've only ever done this in the dark, but I didn't see a taxiway paralleling this particular runway. And so what I do is just kind of go down here, and then we turn around here at the end. And I've only come into this airport one time when it's light. I actually landed here, and I was actually filming the Wickersham Wall video, which you guys have not seen yet. That's the next video, or maybe the next video after that. I think that's Thursday, upcoming here. So the video after this one, if you're catching this video somewhat later downstream. So I kind of got lost coming out of there. I couldn't find my way back to Denali Park Village, and ended up having to divert over to here, which is perfectly fine. I could find this because it's right against the Parks Highway, the George Parks Highway, which goes from, let's say, just a little bit east of Wasilla over to all the way north to Fairbanks. That's kind of the run of that Parks Highway, and this is right along that Parks Highway corridor, and we'll see that when we actually get in the air here. This is the part where I really wish I had toe brakes. Now, I don't know if they have toe brakes in one of these, if you have independent controls on the brakes in a Cessna 172. See, this is the problem. I'm not a pilot, and I don't know much about aviation. I'm just learning to do this stuff. My whole shtick is all about sort of talking about Alaska, so this is new for me. All right, cool. So we're lined up here. I'm going to do one quick check of things before we do anything. Let's go ahead and I'm going to throw one set of flaps down here, and then we're going to make sure that we're set with our... We're not going to use heading mode, but we need to make sure our nav mode is on, which it is, or VNAV mode is on. Those are the two important things, and then those things. Okay, cool. So again, we're going to climb and then kind of come south and then try to loop back like this. It's going to make this a bit of a long trip. And I think, let's see, was able to show, I think I described this right before we launched in here about how we'd actually come. See how we're going to come down here, this glows transition, and come up over. Now, the flight sim, when we first booked it, when we first put in the IFR flight plan, it showed us going this way. And there is a route that takes us this way, and I've done it. But for whatever reason, the last several times I've done it, it's come down through this way. And I think it's just the approach that I'm selecting here. So, cool. All that said, let's give this a shot and see if we can not screw it up, because that seems to be my thing, is messing everything up. Cool. Let's see. Make sure. I don't know if I just set my parking brakes or unset them. Cool. All right, here we go. Let's give this a shot. Let's announce our takeoff. Boy, I don't know which one I'm supposed to put here. Straight out, I guess.
Papa Alpha November November traffic ACBP 444 taking off runway 4 left, departing straight out.
Now see, that's what I'm saying. It thinks I'm on 4 left. Let's go ahead and select 22R and do that again.
Papa Alpha November November traffic
There we
ACBP 444 taking off runway 22 right straight out departure.
Cool, and then we'll just go ahead and try to get this done. Again, this is, I don't have rudder pedals in to fly these things, which is a bit of a drag. At first I thought it was just fine, and the more I get into the flight sim, the more time I spend trying to fly, the more I realize that you kind of need to have them. If you know, the one thing you don't have is a yoke or a joystick, you need to get that first. But then the next thing you need to get, even before a video card upgrade, let's say, is the rudder pedals. All right, so let's see here. The best climb rate, I think, for this aircraft is 75 knots. So let's try to make that happen. Now, the one thing I always struggle with here is, let's tune anchorage departure, is trying to climb and keep straight. Cool, so that worked. So that swap from standby worked.
ACBP 444 is climbing through 700 feet for 5,000 feet.
Cool.
ACBP 444 Fairbanks departure. Continue to echo November November as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
All right, so now we're flying, and I'm still a little bit less. You know what I forgot to do is pull my flaps. I'm always doing that. That's going to help. So I'm going to keep kind of going before I loop around. And this makes a really wacky flight path, but it's just, I think this is one of the shortest flights I've been able to find that's interesting. There's another one that we could take from the Kenai Municipal Airport into Ted Stevens International Airport in South Central Alaska, and that's pretty cool. Okay, I think we're good enough to go ahead and move around here. I always actually circled this one around, heading north first instead of south. So there's that Parks Highway south of us, and you can see a lot of activity along that highway, and that's generally accurate. There's a lot that goes on down there. There's a lot of houses. There's a lot of just buildings and stuff, and usually it's, you know, I always blow right through there. There's nowhere that I'm interested in stopping exactly. So I generally don't, but there's a lot of places I think you could stop, and a lot of activity that goes on there. And there's our airport there, and you can kind of see this hill we're heading towards here. So I'm gonna tip over now. Again, turning on the autopilot at this stage is kind of a sketchy situation, because we are basically flying over this small mountain. And once we're at about 2,000 feet, we're good to go. But I've definitely gotten in some trouble here. I think the first time I flew this route, I came in less than 500 feet above that. This looks great. So that Parks Highway stretches off. Now, Nenana is a town of about 350 or so people. It's kind of a shrinking town a little bit. A lot of small places in the whole country are, so it's kind of a par for the course there. But it's about an hour's drive south of Fairbanks. And in fact, we're not that far from Fairbanks by air. If this was an VFR, which is to say just visual flight, we'd just fly straight there, you know, to the east. As it is, that's not what we're going to try to accomplish here. So I am trying to line up with that flight path so when we do this, it doesn't get too wacky on us. Cool. I think I'm going to try to engage the autopilot and see if that works. Half the time I feel like the nav mode and the VNav are unset on me. There we go. And so it gets weird. Cool, but I think it worked this time. See, this is what I'm talking about, how it's kind of, goes back and forth a little bit. I don't really like that well. I kind of wanted to line up on my own. Cool. One of the things I wanted to point out when we got up here was just how dark it is. Now, I did a flight in the simulator for fun in eastern Tennessee from, holy moly, Chattanooga to Bristol. I don't know if you're familiar with Tennessee at all, you'll recognize those places. And it was just full of cities and roads and lights everywhere, and pretty much anywhere you fly in the lower 48 states you see that. I think over the mountain west it's more like this, but it's like this in all directions. I mean, look at this. When you're flying over here heading towards Fairbanks, and we're going to be using the same flight path that a 737 might take from Anchorage once we get down to that GLOS transition. That's basically the same approach that they're taking. It's like this, you come down out of the clouds, maybe there isn't any, and it's just utterly black through here, especially in the wintertime. There we go. We're going to swing all the way around and basically do a 180. There's Fairbanks out here. North Pole a little bit to the south. That Eielson Air Force Base is just over there. A lot of times you see or at least when I was in college in Fairbanks, and this is almost 20 years ago, maybe it was more than that now, you'd see the A-10 Warthogs flying around out of there. And I don't know if they have F-22s. I know they do in Anchorage. I'm not sure what you see flying around out of that base these days, but when I was younger, that's what we'd see. And those are kind of fun because those pilots, they like to goof off and they'd like draw stuff in the air if they had a really good contrail going. So that was kind of fun. Cool. So we're getting on course. Now you can't see it here, but there are constellations in the flight simulator, which I find really neat. Man, this is so cool looking. So this is the Alaska range. We don't see Denali here, but it's off in this general direction. I think probably that little feature right there, if we got a little closer, we'd find that was Denali. It's a lot more apparent in real life when you look out there. But this Alaska range, you can really see it very well from Fairbanks. And we're just directly over that Nenana Municipal Airport. And Nenana, you can't see it. It's actually got a pretty big dock and railroad service, and they do have daily railroad freight service to this community, which is a little bit of a surprise. But the Alaska Railroad does have, daily freight service to and from Fairbanks and so on. And apparently they stop in here as well. And there's also a barge dock. And if you've ever heard of the Nenana Ice Classic, this is where that occurs. They basically stick a big tripod on this Tanana River and wait for it to fall into the water in the springtime, and there's like a lottery that happens, or not, it's not a lottery, you got to pick the time closest, and then you'll get your you could win or split a prize, and then it's like a few $1,000s usually is what the pot winds up being. And again, this is that Tanana River and Nenana here. So again, I can't reiterate enough how dark this is in the wintertime, and particularly What's particularly interesting, that's hard to communicate to people, is how bright the moon is when it's out. Right now we're getting this sort of moonshine effect where you can see the rivers and stuff. And I don't know if that's truly accurate for this time of year because I haven't flown into Fairbanks this time of year that often, but in the dead of winter, you can absolutely get this great moonshine effect. And this is true anywhere I've lived in South Central Alaska or in Fairbanks, where the moon is really bright, and because of all the snow cover, it's almost light enough to see by. You're not going to see far, but you don't really need a flashlight just to navigate, down if you want to walk down the road or, even in the woods sometimes. And I know looking out my bedroom window when it's clear and it's cold and we have a big full moon and there's snow that's been hard packed and wind blown, it's just practically daylight out there. So, this sort of where you can kind of see the river, that feels really true to me, and that's kind of an effect that you'd see up here. So again, we can see this Parks Highway, and the Parks Highway does kind of stay along the top of this ridge, and I think this is Chena Ridge still. I might be wrong about that, but there's definitely Chena Ridge over here. I sort of understood it. Okay, it came all the way down that way. I probably could have looked up the names for you here, but you do follow that Parks Highway, and you can get some spectacular views of the Tanana Flats, which is what we're over right now. A great big plain for this river, and again, this river flows into the Yukon River ultimately, further east, and I think a bit to the north. I think this Tanana River swings to the north and drains into that Yukon River, which then, of course, empties into the Bering Sea, much to our east. So yeah, flying into Fairbanks, this is what you see, is this glow here, and there's not a whole lot else. In fact, you don't even see this. This is, I think, just kind of overdone for the sim, so that if you wanted to do just, night flying without the IFR, the instrument flight rules, you could probably navigate that way and still make it work. But I think in real life, this is going to be a challenge to really make that out, because there just really aren't any lights along this highway. I mean, I think there are spans where there definitely are some, but my general recollection is it is dark all the way through here. And the same is true actually with this. This is showing lights here, and I think that's true for certain stretches, but my recollection is that this is mostly dark. I mean, the highways through here do not have highway lights, really. I mean, that's the thing you see for the freeways. And I don't know what the heck that light is meant to be, if it's meant to be a stoplight or what. I've flown over that a bunch of times. I do know that the Clear Air Force Base is off in this direction. That is a place that you can land. It's not really an active Air Force base anymore. And Clear, I want to say it's got a few dozens of residents. I didn't look it up. I want to say there's a homesteading effort out in that direction. Clear and Anderson are the two places. And that homesteading effort's fairly recent. We're talking the last 15 years. But you'd have to, of course, with any homesteading, you got to take control of the land. You still got to pay some, and then you got to develop it, and that's pretty expensive to do these days, I think. So, and this will lead you to the next major town along here is going to be Healy, and then Denali Park after that. Man, this is looking awesome here, isn't it? I love flying over it when it looks like this. So anyway, I think I've nattered on for quite a bit. What I want to do, because this video is more about me trying to fly an airplane and be as authentic as I really can without, with a few caveats, I'm going to go ahead and, I guess, fast forward a little bit. We'll speed this up, and we'll kind of pause when we come to the air traffic control bits, and just pause and listen to that and do the interactions. And I might try to think of a few other things to say along the way. So here we are, been asked to hand off to 1209. So I'm going to go ahead and dial that in, 129, swap from standby to active. Great, contact Anchorage Center.
Anchorage Center, ACBP 4445,000 feet.
ACBP 444 Anchorage Center, continue as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
So at this point, we're swinging our way north toward Fairbanks, and this is a standard approach for pretty much anything that I've flown in. Now, granted, we're coming in this way. Most of the time, you're coming in from the south, whether you're in a 737 or, let's say, a Dash 8 or two common commuter aircrafts from Anchorage to Fairbanks. And there's another waypoint back here, which is where they really start to descend, because you got to make it over to the Alaska range here, and that is not a short. This is not a short range, so you gotta be way the heck up there when you do that. Even in the small planes, you kind of want to be up about as high as you can get.
444 contact Fairbanks approach on ONA 25.35.
125.35 ACBP 444.
Now, fortunately for us, they kind of swap between 120.9 and 125.35 throughout through most of the approach, so that makes life a little easier.
Fairbanks approach ACBP 4445,000 feet.
ACBP 444 Fairbanks approach. Continue as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
So once we hit this glows, we're probably going to be told to descend to 2,600 feet, which is a little bit further up, a little bit higher than we'd like to be. I think once we come into our landing, we're going to want to be about 2,100 feet based on that approach plate. And Fairbanks is at 439 feet.
ACBP 444 UR3, 0 miles southwest. Maintain present heading and altitude. Expect ILS runway 2 left approach via glows transition. Cleared to glows.
Excellent. Give it a couple minutes here and they'll tell us to go down. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and prep my autopilot to get us there. So what I can do is set our elevation here to 2,600, just kind of guessing, and then what we'll do is set the rate of descent here. That shows up here and then also here as well. And in this aircraft, 500 feet per minute is more than enough. Certainly for this approach.
ACBP 444, did you hear my last transmission?
I always goof that up.
Maintain present heading and altitude. Expect ILS runway 2 left approach via glows transition. Cleared to glows ACBP 444.
Great, now we can see the runway. That's fantastic. That is where we're headed. And again, you know, this is the same kind of approach from basically from this.
ACBP 444 descend and maintain 2,600 feet.
Excellent, as predicted. Cool.
Descend and maintain 2,600 feet ACBP 444.
Now, as I was saying, this is the standard general approach. So if you sit at the airport, you kind of hang out over here-ish. You can sometimes in the wintertime, certainly when I was a kid, because you get all these flights, you know, for a while there, you'd have flights from Anchorage, particularly in the late summer, early fall, particularly because of tourism and so on. You get more flights than you normally would, so you can see just a line of 737s and things just coming straight in their landing lights. So that's pretty neat. This feels weird to me. I guess, ooh, pay attention here. I'm not paying attention to any of this stuff. I'm letting the autopilot do it for us. Okay, so we're gonna swing around and then come over here. Let's see here. I feel like I'm missing something right now. Not quite. Let's go ahead and fire up our landing lights. We're in the approach pattern at this point. Now, I do have traffic turned off in the flight sim right now, and this just has to do with my own personal development as a pretend pilot. I am intimidated by the need to divert to deal with other traffic or to cope with that. At some point, I'll be ready for that challenge, but right now I'm still navigating all this stuff. So yeah, we're coming into there. Now, if you look, you can kind of see to the right there, there's a shorter runway, and that 02R is probably what you normally take in a general aviation aircraft. Unlike Anchorage, Fairbanks doesn't have a major municipal airport for general aviation. It looks to me like, looking at the map, there are a couple. It's kind of news to me. I'm not as familiar with aviation at Fairbanks, even though it's hugely important in Fairbanks. Aviation is a big deal. I'm not as familiar with that as I am of Anchorage, where I kind of know where a bunch of the general aviation airports are. So, but this one is set up for those smaller aircraft to land on the shorter runway, and the GA parking is just on the other side, just over here. And then the the terminal, if you're coming in on a Big Bird, you're gonna come in over here, or even a Dash 8, you're gonna come in on this side. And the terminal itself for the 737s or what have you is on the east side. It's west side. It's east.
ACBP AC-4444 contact Fairbanks departure on ONE 25.35.
That's weird. That's the same.
Going to 125.35 ACBP 444.
That's already the same comm.
Fairbanks departure ACBP 444 is out of 3,600 feet for 2,600 feet.
ACBP 444 Fairbanks departure. Continue as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
Cool. Anyways, as I was trying to say, the terminal, if you're going to land in a big bird, is off to the east and then to the west. And we're not talking a large terminal. It's a fairly small building. But off to the east is your smaller carriers like Penn Air and those guys who have, I don't know if Penn Air still operates up here. It was Raven, and then Raven went under, and that's a whole thing. But they fly Dash 8s, and that's where they're at, is off to that east side of the terminal. And so that's what I know about that particular airport. I remember when they redid it, was in late 90s, early 2000s. They redid it. I came up for work. It was the first time in a long time I came up to do some work up here, and landed in Fairbanks, and everything was as expected, and then got out of the terminal, and I was like, where am I at? Am I in Seattle right now? Like, I do not recognize this at all. But it's pretty nice. Small, but nice.
ACBP 444 contact Fairbanks approach on ONE 25.35.
125.35 for ACBP 444.
It's weird they keep having us do that.
Fairbanks approach ACBP 444, 2,800 feet.
ACBP 444 Fairbanks approach. Continue to select as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
All right, here in a second they're going to have us contact approaches. I think it's 118.9.
ACBP 444, you are 18 miles southwest of Fairbanks. Contact Fairbanks Tower on 118.3 when inbound.
Okay, I was close. It's 118.3.
Tower on 118.3 ACBP 444.
Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and line up, I think. We're good. Let's contact tower.
Fairbanks Tower ACBP 44416 miles southwest inbound ILS runway 2 left approach.
ACBP 444 Fairbanks Tower. Cleared ILS runway 2 left approach. Altimeter 29.902 with 248
Cleared ILS runway 2 left approach ACBP 444.
Alright, from the approach plates, I know that once we get to Cache up here, which is still considerable distance out, we're talking like, I guess, 4 minutes from here, we want to be at 2,100 feet. I've already set that. I'm not going to start descending just yet. But, interesting thing that's happened here is that we've gone from GPS navigation all by our lonesomes to this Loc 1, which has got our localizer, which is what we dial the frequency in for here. Somehow it managed to take it. I don't think I set it even, because the localizer is at 109.1. Oh, yeah, it's active. I must have set that earlier. So that's good. So we're kind of on track here, and you can see instead of 020, it's 019, which is interesting. But that seems to be a consistent thing in the sim, is that the course kind of changes a little bit. I don't know. I really don't know how it works. I wish I did. I'm going to go ahead and, I guess, engage my descent mode. Down 2100, so we want to be again 2100 here, and then we'll catch this glide slope, which it already knows about. And so what's going to happen is that as we get close to here, when we pass through that threshold, provided we're roughly in this neck of the woods, then this is going to come down until it hits this, and then And then rather than continuing to go down, it's actually going to stay fixed, and our altitude is going to go down. And that'll bring us right into the runway there, which is what we want to do. It feels weird to be doing this in a little bitty Cessna like this, and there's another Cessna in the sim in the deluxe edition that doesn't have this G1000 cockpit. It's got the glass cockpit. It's got the sort of a more, I don't know, analog type of VOR navigation, but I didn't buy that one. And honestly, every YouTube video I've watched on it is somewhat intimidating, so not quite to the point where I feel like I could do better than using these GPS for this kind of approach. So now the one thing that's made me uncomfortable here is the approach mode. You can see has not got turned on, and I feel weird about that because it feels like it did. It caught the VOR and all that good stuff, and presumably it would do that even if I hadn't put in my appropriate VOR. Dialed in the VOR correctly. Alright, it might be a little early, but we're going to go ahead and turn that on just to make sure that we get where we want to be. Now, right now, we're totally in autopilot. The thing is coming in exactly where we need it to. Once we hit the glide slope, you'll see these red lights here. Those are PABI lights. We'll get 2 red and 2 white, which is what we want to see. And you can see that other runway, that 020 right, much shorter. We can easily land this aircraft there, and I've done that a bunch of times. You can do ILS in the sim up to that point, and then you just do an RNAV approach from there, and that works just fine too. It's at night when it's like this, you don't really need ILS. You can navigate just based on where the heck the lights and things are, but if it was raining or something like that, you'd want to see. You might not be able to see these until you're just about to the point where you're at your minimums, which is to say you're at a point where you're going to have to miss approach. This here is the Nenana River. The Chena River forks off here. I want to say it's like it's hard for me to tell in the dark exactly where that is. It's definitely on the north side of the runway because it comes out and there's some hotels along here. I want to say that you come out of the airport and then you get on here and there's like Pike's Landing over here, and that's right up against that Chena River, and that's a nice place to stay. I've been there a couple times. My most interesting thing that's ever happened to me there is that I was up for work, and it's one of the preferred hotels for where I work. It's Pike's, and there's a few others in the area. You get a deal when you stay there. There we go. We've hit the glide slope. Boy, we really went down a lot though, didn't we? Let's go ahead and start backing off our speed as well while we're at it.
ACBP 444 cleared to land runway 2 left. Wind 24, 8 at 3.
Launch landing.
Cleared to land runway 2 left ACBP 444.
Alright, I'm going to go ahead and dial in the ground real quick so I don't have to worry about it when we get there. I kind of forgot to do it, but I was talking. I'm so busy talking, I didn't do it. But anyways, thinking about that Pike's Landing, I happened to I ran into Congressman Don Young, who for our state has been congressman for about 1,000 years. And I'm saying this right before the election, and there's an outside chance he may be unseated, but I'm pretty skeptical. He's been around for such a long time. But anyways, he's a typical politician. I recognized him and said hello because, what the hell else do you do? You get nervous. You're like, oh, wow, this is a famous person in this state. And he was polite enough to say hello back, and I could tell he was struggling to decide whether or not he already knew me, which is not the case. But I have one of those faces. People think they recognize me. So that's always a thing for me, is like, no, we've never met. I don't want to get yelled at because things start to chime, so I'm going to go ahead and drop this down to like 500 feet or so, because this will chime when we get down low, and I don't like it chiming when I'm perfectly high altitude. And Fairbanks is at 439 feet elevation, which is what we're aiming at. So the idea here is we're going to let this take us most of the way in, and then we'll go ahead and turn off the autopilot and see if we can make a good landing here. Let's see. Ideally, we'd like to be at 65 knots, I think. Actually, ideally, I'd like to have the flaps down right now. I got to talking. So you can see these lights here. If you're unfamiliar with these, 2 white and 2 red is exactly where you want to be. Cool, let's throw some flaps down. Let's do that again, because I really want to slow down a lot. Okay, cool. I'm going to try to make that turn there. You can see the blue lights up here. This is where I want to try and turn to general parking. General aviation's over here. We're going to go across that runway. Might actually just try and turn here and then dial across so we're not on the runway there. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off autopilot right now. And then try to take us in. Fortunately, there's no wind, so this is nice. Okay, very good. Ooh, that wasn't terrible. Let's see if we can make this one. Oh, hey, look at us.
ACBP 444, turn next taxiway.
Very nice. I wonder if that'd be practical in real life.
444, contact ground on ONE2 1.9er.
Oh, 182.9er. Let's see. I think I got that dialed in.
Going to 121.9er ACBP 444.
Cool. Let's go ahead and request a taxi to parking.
Fairbanks ground ACBP 444 taxi to parking.
ACBP 444 taxi to general aviation parking via taxiway Delta Echo Cross runway 20 right, Echo Cross runway 20 left, Echo Alpha.
Taxiing to general aviation parking via taxiway Delta Echo Cross runway 20 right, Echo Cross runway 20 left, Echo Alpha ACBP 444.
All right, cool. Well, I generally know where I'm going at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and get there. I don't want to necessarily take you all the way through my taxiing to parking, which is about a gazillion miles. Okay, it's like less than a half a mile, but whatever. So anyways, I know this is different content than what I've been producing so far and what I intend to produce for the channel, but I really enjoy making these videos, and I've sort of just learned how to do this IFR stuff, at least a little bit, and I thought this might be kind of a fun video, especially sort of showing off what certain parts of Alaska look like at night, given the fact that it's so sparsely populated that sometimes there's just nothing to see, and that's just as cool as seeing all those cities and all those people down there. So anyways, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more content, stuff like this, and definitely like my tour of Alaska, hit the subscribe button, hit notify if you don't want to miss out on anything. Otherwise, thanks so much for hanging out with me all the way to the end of this one. I know this is a bit of a technical thing for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, but I do appreciate it. And I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.